Ready for some lore? That's what this episode's primarily going to be all about, lore. Let's get to it. If I have time, I might try and do a little bit more Drepfell, but primarily this episode's going to be all about lore. Alright, here we are. Here's the lore for, Angolwen, I guess. So, Lecture on Humility by Archmage Finale, or What is Magic by Archmage Tarolian. Lecture on Nature and Magic by Archmage Tarolian. What is magic? A study by Archmage Tazimar Tarolian. How uncouth and common a question it must seem, and yet it is the one I am asked most often, even by some of our most learned students. Too often we teach the art by practice and imitation and concentration on the end effects, without teaching in greater detail the underlying principles. Just as a musician may merely play on a harp without knowing how the sound arises from the vibration of the strings, so a mage may make use of magic without realizing the true forces at work. In this document, I hope to give learning of nature magic and how the underlying effects give rise to all the wondrous fruits we can produce. Alchemists will tell you that the world is made up of many base elements, materials: lead, copper, iron, gold, and so on. They are fixated on splitting things down into these components and investigating how they react to each other. However, there is more to the world than this. Certainly, they represent the physical makeup of things, but they do not show the forces and energy that bring everything into motion. The forces of fire, cold, lightning, and life itself are all very real effects, and these we call the elements of Maj'Eyal. The true Archmage is interested in the interactions of the elemental forces of the world, and manipulating them to his or her need. The elemental forces exist naturally in the world, and are weaved around all things in all-encompassing canvas. They move, vibrate, and resonate with the materials of the world, and the effects of each play heavily on one another. All creatures naturally make use of these elements, and some are more tuned to the threads than others. With great training and practice, we can become more tuned to these wild forces ourselves, and so doing, some can match the speed of wolves, the strength of bears, and the tenacity of the Trents, and even immense natural power of dragons. But there is another way of gaining access to these elemental forces, a more direct way, though some would call it unnatural. Long ago, people discovered, with much training, how to concentrate their wills to pluck the elemental threads directly. This can release great energies and can be shaped to reduce real effects in the world. Plumes of fire, bolts of lightning, and blasts of ice can all be called forth by those suitably trained. The true masters of magic can go much further, combining many resonant forces to create complex physical effects. The tapping of threads can be a draining task, requiring much more effort of will to sustain. This is what we versed in the arcane called mana, that mental stamina dedicated to the interaction with the elements of the world. Continued use of magic is like the constant lifting and holding of heavy weights, and eventually one will find one's capacity drained. Practice allows one to build up greater pools of mana, and certain runes and spells can gradually build extra reserves to be called upon as needed. Magical runes and items are imbued with the attachment to certain elemental threads. This requires delicate work by experienced and gifted enchanters. The most intricate of magical artifacts demands many years of work, using intense mental effort to permanently attune the core materials to the right elemental energies. Gemstones are especially easy to work with in this craft, and alchemists use them often to bring about elemental effects. Some believe that magic is inherently wrong, that the so-called twisting of the elements with one's will can only lead to terrible things. As students of Angolwen, I assume you disagree. Magic is simply an extension of the forces of nature. And are we not natural creatures that use it? But remember that magic is still a powerful force that can be used for good or ill. Magic is indeed a tool of immense value. Use it wisely. So yeah, basically this talks about magic and all the they're basically different things about it. You got the elemental forces that exist in the world, and this talks a little bit the Wilders, for example. And then you have stuff that talks about the mages and how they're different. Alright, let's talk about Lectures on Humility by Archmage Finale. Lecture on Humility by Archmage Finale. It were some years now since twain of our brightest students left Angolwen, sullied by our veil of secrecy and our silent duty. It still lies heavy on mine heart to think of what they could accomplish within our private circle. I but hope that one day they will return, and they will understand the reasons behind our solemn mission. But I must think of the future, for too many of our regrets in mind long past, and to hold their burdens over long is to be crushed. I must think of ye, young acolytes, who start now in the learning of our lores. I must explain to ye our mission, our purpose, our justification, so that ye understand all what we do, and why in secrecy we operate. Trying to heal the harms of our past, trying to build a better future. For our penance is great, and never should we be forgotten in Maj'Eyal, the terrors of the Spellblaze. I should know well, for I were there. But a young mage was I, though not without promise. I knew of the Shalor mage's experiments on the Chateau ruins. I were jealous of the powers they sought to unlock. No fear or caution had I in my arrogant youth, thinking only of the opportunities and glory. Heed well that thought. 2,600 cycles of the sun have passed above my head, and yet still I cannot shake the memory of the day the sky turned to flame and the earth was torn to shreds. I felt the magic in the air, the sudden unleashing of arcane energies beyond anyone's control. I knew in an instant that the Shaloran had unlocked the power of our pearls, but the forces were far beyond our expectations. I saw within the seconds the stream of blazing energy tear through the sky above our heads, and they then rained down in crimson plumes of destruction. It was all I could to put a shield above myself, and the burns I suffered were terrible. Such the scars remain to this day. No one about me survived. Still I remember my sister Nera's shortened scream as she stood beside me, her skin flayed off by terrible energies, her body consumed by pyre flames, her ashes strewn by a great tumult of the earth. 26 centuries I have passed, and still I do wake to the sound of that scream. Many were the loved ones I lost that day, and I were not alone. Countless perished across the lands, and countless more died in the chaos which followed. Then the spell hunt began, and the people rose against the arrogance of the mages and began slaughtering us mercilessly. After the Spellblaze, our abilities were in disarray, our mana channels sundered. We were nigh defenseless, and it took great effort to gather many of us together and found the hidden city of Angolwen. A great many mages were killed in the riots that followed, I, and many innocents too. For distress was rife and thirst for blood all-consuming, but alas, the suffering did not end there. The effects of the Spellblaze can still be seen today, in tortured lands and blighted earths. In the Age of Dusk, it were much worse. New diseases arose, plagues swept across all cities, civilizations brought to nothing. All our races came close to extinction, and an age of darkness came upon all learning and enlightenment. Feudal lords and bandit gangs fought amongst these what little healthy lands were left, whilst the blights continued to ravage what free people remained. That was when I did begin our secret mission to repair the world, to make right the errors of our actions. In silent operation we visited the broken lands, and used our powers to heal, not destroy. Many centuries took, but at last the after effects of the Spellblaze began to diminish, and the people began to rebuild. Ah, how much hope was in me then, but foolish were I to think it could be so easy. The wounds of Maj'Eyal struck deeper and more than mere disease on the surface. The poison went down much further, and the cracks tore through the very roots of our world. One dark and stormy day, a great cloud swept forth from the east, and the land rose to 500 leagues in the sky. We could do naught but gasp in horrors. Whole seas, whole races were swept in the sea. The continents were sheared apart, and all of Maj'Eyal forever changed. It was a sight to humble even the greatest archmage. Aye, and humility is what I teach you now. Know ye well that there are forces out there which dwarf ye into insignificance. Know as well that they have no glory, no pride, for they are forces of ultimate destruction which bring only terror and pain. Our mission is to help the world. Our penance is to act in secret. Old wounds remain and new threats do arise, but all must be dealt with from behind our cloak of silence. The mistrust of our ilk still lies deep in people's minds, and there are even those who hate us with violent passion. But the world is changing, and perhaps one day we shall be accepted again in society. Until then, remember well this lesson of humility, and in open worlds, keep ye secret and keep ye safe. So yeah, basically it's like talks a little bit about the nature of magic, and Angolwen is basically out there to try and heal the world, but they also realize that magic can be very destructive, and that people have not really liked Angolwen, or mages for that matter. Alright, the rune shots I really don't care about. I accidentally used the Winterfire file again, because why not? I'm an idiot. So, that was the lore inside Angolwen. Let's head down to Shalor, because Shalor has its own lore. The library here. Right down here. So yes, the Chronicles of the Spellblaze. The Spellblaze Chronicles, A Fateful Meeting. From the Memoirs of Angolwen, the leader of the Grand Council of Elvala. Chapter 1, A Fateful Meeting. This tale begins in the Age of Allure, when I was yet young, and the idea of youth and age was still a pressure on our people. It is one tale amongst a host of tales, for many are the stories of tragedy and heroism that befell all the races in this era. I can only give my story, my tragedies and my follies dressed as heroism, woven around the great force that shook our world and changed our histories, the Spellblaze. I first met Lenali at the Council Summit, when our leader, Apphinius, was meeting with the head of the Carcruel. I remember the huge man walking through the gates of our city, our people staring at his wide girth and bristling hair, his fur clothes, and his proud stride. How out of place it looked amongst our slender elves. Some thought him a barbarian, but I could see behind his frosty eyes there was great power. He was from a hardy race of men that once dwelt in the north of Maj'Eyal, who it was said drew power from the green fires that danced in their ever-winter skies. Terfel was his name, and like of him was not trod through the earth or snow of many centuries. Upon his right hand he wore the ring of Carcruel, a luscious gold band adorned by a blazing ruby, token to his position as leader of the greatest union of human mages in Maj'Eyal. With him were his twin daughters, Lenali and Nera, who walked before him. Identical they were in looks, yet I saw straight away that they were opposites in personality. They were each of crimson hair, worn long and spilling tresses, with pale skin that shone in the sunlight. They were dressed in silken robes, but whilst Nera was adorned in yellow and orange, Lenali was blue and silver. Nera was bright of glance and cheery in voice, remarking on every item of beauty she passed as they strolled through the courtyards of Elvala. Lenali was quiet, though, and stern of face, coolly analyzing and calculating all she saw. Beneath the icy exterior I could see a fire, nay a blaze, a bright burning passion yearning to break out, yet kept restrained. For a moment we made eye contact as the party approached the citadel, and I could see laid bare her wild spirit and untempered thoughts, a will and strength of mind that was utterly unconquerable. It took my breath from me. Few of my people have ever understood how one of our race could be infatuated with a human, but they have not known Lenali. Not as I have known her. Like raw fire, given flesh is she, a burning ball of emotions and desires. Her fervent mind brooks no opposition, and her wit and words charm a chorus all around her. Beautiful and radiant is her form, as bright as the summer sun, yet also cold and remote, unreachable unless she wants to be reached. In all the ages, this has never changed about her. I barely noticed Nera, greeting me warmly as she passed through the gate. Lenali gave me but a curt nod. I followed after, as her leader and his guests entered the grand chamber and took their seats. The summit was to begin on the planning of a new endeavor, a great work by our highest mages to tap into the powers of the shelter fire portals. Long had the relics of the ancient race lain dormant beneath the soil, their powers untouched. With that mighty strength brought forth, we could end the war of the orcs quickly and decisively. The Spellblaze they called it, and it was the name we spoke in awe and reverence. King Epiphanes began the meeting, introducing our guests, and then those around him. "This is my general," he said, gesturing to me, "Commander Gaywell of the Sherloran armies." Immediately, Lenali looked at me and gawked. "What?" she cried, staring at my armor and baldric. She turned away from us, seeming not to heed her distinguished host. "Father, what be the meaning of this?" he said to the burly man. "He gave tell that the Sherloran had the mightiest battle mages, yet the general be cased in steel and girt with sword. Does a mere fighter command experts in the art?" Epiphanes looked outraged, but I laughed suddenly, both at her extreme rudeness and her wild presumptions. "A mere fighter?" I said, between incredulous gasps. "Lady, you would do well not to judge so on appearances. For if I judged right, I see no mere infinite lass before me, but a great master of flames and inflagrations, and we were Freds more stern-willed even than their chill-blooded father. But do not presume yourself a greater worker of the art than I. For I am Aaron Garlic, master of the arcane blade, a channeler of mighty elemental forces. The spell is willed for my steel of slaying more orcs than you have seen in your short life, or like will ever see." She shook at me with her sudden interest. "A strange technique it sounds. Ludicrous it seems that with one can simply burn foes from afar. Though perhaps if we orc together sometime I shall see for myself. But ye would be hard-pressed indeed to do better on the battlefield." "I shall endeavour to impress my lady," I said with a mock bow of my head. A thin smile played across her lips. Turfel grunted and turned his shaggy head to the king. "Business," he said in a blunt and brief manner. I had heard reported of him. Ephinus cleared his throat and sat back in his chair. "We had a grand plan before us," he began. "For many years, we have had plagued by orc attacks. Initially, we were weakened from the Allure Wars, but now that we are beginning to recover our strength, it is time to put our joint enemy to rest. Too often they have threatened to overrun us all, to destroy civilization forever. We have all lost much. Therefore, I can deeply sympathize with your personal loss." The fur-cloth man did not change his expression, but I could see his daughters dip their heads in solemn thought. "I have been leading our archmages in an experiment on the Shartul Farfolds to the east of here. We believe we can evoke the great powers still within to create a wave of destructive energy that would be directed against the Orcish armies. If all the races cooperate in drawing the Orcish forces out, then we can end this war in one swift strike. The Orcs would be decimated beyond recovery, and Yao would be cleansed of their presence. I have approached the leaders of the other races. The Halflings are fully supportive. The Nargol regions have even provided with some of their historical research on Shartul ruins." Turfel cursed insanely. "Research done on human slaves," he barked. He turned quiet, then letting his temper settle. "What of your city and forest cousins?" Now, before we go on here, it's worth knowing that the forest refer to like the Florin, and the sea refers to the Nolorn because they actually existed around before Spellblaze and then directly right after for a little bit before turning into the Nagas. So Ephinus looked at him coolly in the eye. "The Nolorn are prideful and do not wish to cooperate. They think they can protect our lands on their own. Yet I believe they will thank us in the end. The Florin are not entirely keen either, but we have discussed with their king and queen and given great assurances as to the safety of our operations. They do not wholly trust us or our command of the arcane, but in this they will not oppose us. Chatter isn't weary of orc attacks on the borders as any of us. They will give aid where it is convenient, as long as they ride under their own banners. We do not particularly need them, of course, but we thought it prudent to involve all we could." The other human leaders have mostly assented. Some have expressed wholly irrational fears of our activities. Alas, legends and myths still bound to scare people away from anything to do with a Shartul. But we are confident that we know what we are doing here. The Cockerel elite, I'm sure, will understand, and your alliance is worth a dozen lesser kings. The brilliant man stared hard and long into Ephinus' eyes before turning to his daughters. "What do ye think, girls?" Nair was first to respond, and there was a color in her cheeks and emotion in her voice. "I deemed the Shaloran king remote and proud. Sympathy he talks of whilst using our mother's memories as a tool. Understanding he proclaims, yet how can any truly know the subtlety behind those Shartul relics? Untouched they be for millennia, and their original power is still unknown. What pride lets ye think ye can toy with them now? It be folly to use a weapon that ye know not how to wield." The room went quiet, and I could see Ephinus was silently fuming. He was not accustomed to such open criticism. Then Lanali began to speak, and her voice was slow and cool, yet all ears hung on her words. "Many have been the works of pride over the years that have risen in splendor. Whence have come our great arcs, our great cities, and arcane weavings that shape our societies? No meekness be found in their crafting. There be no shame in acting out of pride, and we gain nothing from misplaced humility. Too long have the powers of Shartul been left untapped by fearful and timid hearts. I could see then her eyes light up in excitement. Think of the glories we can unlock. This war of the orcs could be but a beginning. Great benefit could be brought to us all. To leave these powers buried would be a crime, I say." Turfel paused reflectively before nodding his head slowly, and it was clear that Elias' words aligned better with his own thoughts. "Very well," he slowly announced, looking directly at Ephinus. "We are with you." Nera stayed silent with brooding concern, but a flash of satisfaction crossed her sister's eyes. So yes, basically, Lanai was for it, Nera was against it, and Farah was like, okay. Alright, well that's chapter 1. Let's go into chapter 2. A Night to Remember. From the Memoirs of Angolwen, leader of the Grand Council of Elvala, Chapter 2, A Night to Remember. It was 3 nights later I woke in darkness from a troubled dream to find my window open, the silk drapes bellowing in a breeze. As my eyes adjusted to the light, I saw Lanai stood at the foot of my bed, a thin azure dress clinging to her skin in the chill night air. Around her was a cashmere belt, inset with opals and woven with pale runes, and gold jewelry adorning her neck and wrists. A long staff rested slightly in her hands, rubies glistening in the decorated top. Her red hair stirred in the wind as she gazed at me. "What are you doing here?" I inquired. I did not bother asking how she managed to sneak into my bedchamber past many guards. I knew that no less than a council member would be able to divine her presence when she put her mind to illusion. She looked at me slowly for a moment, before turning her eyes to the rest of the room, analyzing my personal space in detail. There would be a band of orcs marauding in the north, she said in a distracted tone. She picked an oriental dagger from the shelf and looked it over as she spoke. They looked like to cause trouble for some outlying elven settlements. I will summon a raiding party at once, I said, rising quickly from my bed, unheeding of modesty. Oh, how boring, she complained, putting the dagger down and spinning to face me. What of the promise she made to hunt orc together? What, just two of us? Aye, she said, looking my unclad form and down from a slow glaze, seeming to take delight in the sight. Or are ye not man enough? A strange question to ask an elf, my lady, but I can take this band of orcs myself, I am sure. If you wish to tag along, then I cannot promise to keep you safe. You laughed then, and the sound was like ringing crystal. Very well then, get ye your steel stick, and we shall see who holds their own best. I agreed with a smile, and went to my armory and shoved on my metal greaves and my chain hauberk, my breastplate and my silk gauntlets. Lanalis tied her surely impatience. Must she wear that tin suit? It is my battle gear, I said, pulling on my visored helmet and wrapping a thick cloak around my shoulders. You look like a golem, she muttered, visibly annoyed. Come then, I grow bored. He leapt out the window, taking to the air with grace, flying away into the night. I took my great sword from the hanging. It was a simple-looking blade, adorned only with a heavy moonstone on its pommel. But its looks belied its power, for it was forged by the dwarves in the early years before vanity overcame their works, and their weapons became more for show than battle. It had an edge that clove through the steel and bone with ease, without ever dulling the blade. Mooncutter, it is called, though it is lost to me now. I gave it a swing through the air before leaping out the window myself, conjuring a cushioning of air beneath me and falling swiftly after Lanali. With rapid pace, we flew through the scattered clouds in silence for 20 minutes before Lanali began to descend. I could see nestled between some low hills where the flames of campfires, as we came closer to the sound of orcish chanting, became clear. How shall we approach them? I called out, wondering what tactics the sorceress would want to employ. Directly, she said, and with that she made a sudden burst of speed, coming right above the orcish camp and descending into the mist. With a curse I sped after her, landing by her side and drawing Mooncutter as the orcs rose in fury and alarm, grabbing up their weapons. As a ring of dark swords and spears and halberds gathered around us, Lanai turned to me with a wild smile. Time to dance. She shot forth a ray of purple arcane energy from her right hand, whilst her left held up a staff, its tipping blazing like a torch. Flames leapt up in tandem from my own blade as I rose and high and swept it before me in a wide arc, cutting down the nearest brute and sending a shockwave of fire into the troops behind it. I pressed forward, forcing back the orcs before me with a roaring hot wind. Their weapons dropped from their hands as they reached up to cover their faces, and with a grin of satisfaction I rushed to hew their heads off. But as I spun my blade, I was knocked to the ground from behind by a blast of fire, and turning about I saw Lanai standing in a pillar of flame, her arms outstretched as she expanded around it. Too hot for ye, Aren, she called out as the orcs nearby were fried to a crisp, their flesh withering into black dusk. I grunted and turned my blade into ice, and my deft sword stroke sent streams of freezing cold into the orcs around her, so that they shattered like glass before the fire ever hit them. Lanali cursed my name as she dropped the flames from about her. Don't ruin my fun, she exclaimed, before teleporting to the other side of the camp and beginning to blast the orcs there. I laughed and turned on the beast nearest me and brought tumbles to the earth with each swing, so that they lost their footing and fell to the ground before my sword found their throats. Then I conjured a mighty spark of lightning, spearing it through their densest ranks, and I rushed along in growing length, hewing down the monsters before they could react. I laughed again with the fey heat of battle, and I discarded my helmet and tore off my plate mail, taking joy from moving about the field with ease and slaughtering my inferior foes. Mooncutter danced through their flesh, and their dark blood gushed and fountained with joyful rhythm. On the far side of the camp, explosions and screams marked Lanai's passage, and I saw burning limbs flying into the air and streaks of fire tearing through the night. The sorceress was wreathed in flames, her eyes shining, and a dancing blaze about her made her look like a nymph of fire incarnate. No more beautiful and awe-inspiring a sight had I ever beheld. Seeing their numbers quickly dwindle, the orcs began to flee, but I faced to block their retreat and called forth a wave of water, forcing them back against Lanai's flames. There against the wall of fire I dashed him, and great numbers of them fell before the leaves scattered in the winds. Blood spilled thick and plentiful, and with but a few more thrusts in Mooncutter and Blast in his hands, the battle was over. Not a single orc still moved, and well over 400 lay dead on the ground. Lenali and I faced each other, panting with sudden exhaustion, as the adrenaline of the fight left us. I lost count, I said between breaths, of who slew more. She grinned coyly at me, sweat trickling down her face, minor cuts and burns left in her robes and tires, with one shoulder strap hanging loose. Her glistening chest heaved up and down with each breath, and her deep eyes looked at me with naked intensity. She strode forward then, and grabbed me roughly by my hauberk. She pulled my lips to hers. The kiss was hot and fierce, and she bit my lower lip. The course of blood battle came back of me afresh. I kissed her again and grabbed her body, pulling her tight to me, her lips locked. She tore lustily at my remaining arm, flinging it to the ground, and I slid off her silken clothes, till we were left bare beneath the stars. Then against the rocky outcrop we pressed against each other, still gasping and sweating at front of fight. There with blazing passion flesh met flesh, and our hot moans rose into the cold night sky. So hooray! Romance! Alright, well, let's talk about the Far Portal. From the Memoirs of Angolwen, leader of the Grand Council of Elvala. Chapter 3, The Far Portal. Why are you not leader? Asked Lenali, resting her head in her hand, with her naked form strewn across my bed. I looked at her, surprised by a sudden question. My mind struggled briefly with a strange query, still recovering from the heat of sex, but a moment before. Why should I be leader? I asked back. Because you are strong, of course, she responded. I deem you stronger in battle than any of your kin. You should rule with such strength. I chuckled softly. Mere strength is not enough to rule people. It requires responsibilities, careful decision-making, and above all, politics. I have no interest in such matters. Ephinus is far better suited to those sort of things. Give me a sword and soldiers to lead into battle and I am content. Let the leaders worry about where I should point my blade. She was quiet a moment, seemingly dissatisfied with that response. You are not happy with the current plans, though. For a moment I was struck with a shock. It surprised me how clearly she divined my inner thoughts. I had not expressed my concerns to anyone, yet she could so easily read me. 5 weeks it had been since we first met, and it seemed like there was nothing I could hide from her keen sight. The preparations for the Spellblaze were well on their way. Fearful of the Cruel, I returned to the Northern Citadel, but I left its Dars as ambassadors to aid in our designs. It meant Lenali and I had many opportunities to meet, though we kept it secret. Few of my race would understand or approve of such liaison, and none of us could afford a scandal. Yet I could not resist the human nation's advances, nor she mine. I am a warrior, I said to her finally, getting brusquely from my bed and recovering my robes. I settled my battles facing my foe, not by toiling with relics from afar. It irks me that we must deal with our enemies in such a craven way. But does it not excite ye, using these shelter ruins? She said, putting a finger to her lower lips as she still languished in my bed, the sheath sticking tightly to her bare skin. She seemed visibly aroused by her thoughts. Such powers linked dormant for so long, ready to be summoned to our control. How were it to be command so great a venture? I shook my head sadly as I finished buttoning up my doublet. I do not trust these ruins. We Shaloran are mighty, but we have yet to reach the heights of Shartul. Nor do we truly understand the devices they have left behind. My thoughts and more with your sister Nera on this. We should stick to what abilities we have mastered, without stretching ourselves to such grand experimentation. Lenali looked at me intently, a touch of humor in her dark eyes. If ye were a leader, then ye could stop this, but then I would have to hate ye. I allowed myself a thin smile. Well, that would indeed be a terrible and dangerous thing. I finished dressing whilst Lenali still lay in my bed, her face reflective. I must go now to check on the latest operations of the Far Portal. You are welcome to join me. She shook her head languidly. Nay, I wish to rest more. And besides, hearing their reports would but make me jealous. Leave me here a while. I will depart in secret later. I left my chamber den, dark thoughts now brooding at the back of my mind. The date was coming closer when our plans would come to fruition, and the great Spellblaze would be unleashed. A heavy foreboding lay over my heart, yet the alternative seemed grim. The war of the orcs was going badly, with few races able to secure their borders well, and attacks from the brutes ever increasing. Their numbers seemed inexhaustible. Though they had little skill in warfare, they could bring great harm through unprotected townsteads, and enough forces could bring down cities. One human kingdom had collapsed under their attacks but a week before. After that, many who had initially rejected our plans came begging for our protection. The Spellblaze seemed our only hope against immediate disaster. Such thoughts were weighing on my mind as I passed through my chambers into the palace, down to the courtyard by the main gate. Then from the corner of my eye I saw a swish of long red hair, and spun around to think Glenna had followed me, but the golden robes and bright eyes in there revealed otherwise. "Expecting someone else?" she asked with a wide smile, seeing the surprised look on my face. "I was indeed Foss," explained, bowing slightly to her greet her. "I am just on my way to inspect the Farpool operations. Perhaps you—" "I shall join ye," she said quickly, not waiting on my invitation. I nodded my assent and guided her to my carriage. As soon as we took off east, the mood changed. "She was only hurt," she said silently. I cursed quietly, understanding her meaning. "Are there no secrets to be had in Maj'Eyal?" I muttered. "Not between sisters, and especially not between twins." She smiled warmly at me, yet there was no humor in her eyes. "I mean it, though. I love my sister, but I know her ways. She be fickle, and will to do her own things when she likes. Do not be surprised when she bores of ye, nor hurt." "I am quite capable of taking care of myself," I said in a clipped tone. She gazed into my eyes a moment and then turned away to stare out the window. "Well, I have warned ye," she replied softly, a touch of sadness in her voice. Was it jealousy, perhaps, to stir such an outburst? And for her sister's attention or for mine? I never did discover. The rest of the trip was spent in sullen silence. The sun was setting behind our carriage, casting a long shadow on the path ahead, and bathing the land about in crimson light. It seemed for a moment like we rode into some demon's plain. Pitch black shadows melting into blood-red soil, whilst cold white stars began to spear through the sky above. I shivered suddenly as the ruins came into view. Few sheltered ruins have been discovered which even come close to matching the grandeur of those which were near Elvala. Many centuries our people spent excavating them, digging deep into the ground, ever careful not to damage to upset the relics. The centerpiece was the Crystal Tower. From the surface, all that could be seen of it was a wide, even-sized square, which, when cleaned of soil, revealed a white stone smoother than marble. But delving down, our archaeologists found it plummet deep below the ground. Half a mile it went down, the featureless white stone, not bearing a single mark or engraving anywhere on the surface, until it ended suddenly and without foundation. It was like the whole tower was separated from the earth, some strange thing of stars that had dropped from the skies and lay still sleeping beneath the soil. Some years earlier, our people had solved the invisible ruins that allowed to be opened, revealing vast crystalline halls and chambers arrayed in geometric patterns of sublime beauty. Light sparked and shone from every surface, and the walls seemed to hum with energy. Many shafts and passageways could only be navigated by flight, and at the top was found a grand room large enough to encompass the whole house of Elvala. At its center was a farpool, a raised dais 40 feet in diameter and cracking with energy, upon which slowly spun a cloud of stars. It was beautiful and frightening, enchanting and terrifying. No power of Shaloran could discern its operation, and though through careful experimentation we were able to manipulate its energies, never could we get a true grasp of the forces that lay beneath. Nera and I descended to the base of the tower, smothered in the cold shadows of the excavated ruins. I nodded to the guards as we passed through the square white entrance, and Nera's eyes instantly enlarged in wonder. The skittering rooms were eye-catching to be sure, but they were also desolate and empty. I tried to imagine what it must have looked like to be filled with Sharatul. How did they all die? I asked under my breath as we traversed the crystal halls, a question many have asked before. The sorceress picked up my words and laughed softly. It be a mystery, of course. My mother once taught me that they killed themselves in the Great Civil War, using methods far beyond our imaginings. I wonder, said I. We had our records, of course, which we didn't share with younger races, but they were not so clear-cut as the many myths that had spread over the ages. We reached the central shaft, and from them there levitated up past floors and floors of vending chambers, living spaces, workshops, storerooms, and many other areas of purpose undivined by our lore masters. Finally, after ascending for several minutes, we rose into the grand chambers of the Farpool, and Nera gasped to see its size. Her eyes soon settled in the great shelter Farpool, sparks from it reflecting off the roof hundreds of feet above. About it were bustling many of the Shaloran mages in silken robes, and Ephes himself was leading the operations. He broke from his advisors as he saw us arrive, and strode toward us with confident smile on his face. Though he wore the grey robes of a research mage, he still bore his great golden staff, luminous, token of his position as king. Ah, Durin Aaron, he said, you have come at last, and brought the Carcruel girl with you. How splendid. I gave a small bow. Yes, Majesty, I am here for the update on our operations. Yes, yes, of course, he said with a dismissive hand gesture. And doubtless the girl is here to make sure we know what we're doing. If Nera wasn't fed, she covered it up well. It would be my delight to see evidence of your skill and power of the ruins, Lord Ephes. The king smiled and nodded then, and called to some of his aides. Prepare the topography and demonstration, using a cute fire stand. He turned back to us then. It's not mere skill and power, of course, that we can show you, but subtlety and skill too. Now excuse me a moment, whilst I join the others. He went with two of the senior research mages, then to the front of the far portal. They faced each other and began a low humming in unison, and slowly it seemed that sparks from the far portal began to flicker readily. Over the course of a few minutes, their hum became a higher-pitched chant, but softly sung and still in perfect unison. As they raised their staves, they appeared above the far pole in an image in flames, and looking at it, both Nera and I marveled, for we could see clearly that it was an image of ourselves, looking upwards as if we were staring into a mirror. Our features and movements were all clearly discernible, down to the smallest detail, all carved out of the flickering of roaring fire. Then the chanting rose higher, and it seemed the image zoomed out, so that we saw a far portal nearby us and a mage's scatter about. And still, the focus soared upwards till we were but specks in the wide hall, until the image was displaced by a white square with carven edges dug into the earth above it. And I knew we were looking at the top of the crystal tower from above. The view widened, and I could see the land rushing away, and the city of Elvala was to the west. The chanting rose higher, and now the sea could be seen, and mountains to the northwest, and all land above. And soon a continent was visible, right to the frozen north, and the ocean wrapping all about. And it seemed small white stars were dawning about the landscape. The scene reached the transcendo, and before us hung the image of the whole old Maj'Eyal, a globe of fire suspended in mid-air, slowly turning. Then the chanting stopped, and the image disappeared, and I could hear beside me Nera suddenly gasp for air, as if she had not dared draw breath for the last few minutes. You see now, said Ephes, grinning with pleasure. From the smallest details to the grandest scale, we can manipulate the far pole's energy. And did you see those white points marking across the image? They are the other far poles spread across the world, and this one can connect to them all. With careful, delicate control, we can harmonize the energy of them all and use it to our will. I'm afraid your swords can be no match to this, Aranan. I had no words to respond, and only nodded softly, still in awe of what I'd seen. Nera seemed the same. I could see her now staring at the far pole with some eager eyes as her sister. She was converted. Yet my hand strayed across the hilt of the mooncutter, and my heart still murmured with unease. Alright, so, Before the Dawn. So, from the memoirs of Aranan Gamrel, leader of the Grand Council of Elvala. Chapter 4, Before the Dawn. I rode my great grey horse at a low trot, surrounded by my lieutenants and their elite cavalry and spell rangers. Besides me was a brown mare my squire held high a banner emblazoned with a flame-wreathed sword, symbol of my personal entourage. The pole seemed to shiver slightly in the young elf's hands, a sign of nervousness. Hold the banner firm, boy, I said in a commanding tone. The squire suddenly sat upright in a saddle, and gripped tight on the banner pole. Yes, sire, he said alarmed. Whatever you say, sire. He kept his head faced forward, but I could see his eyes glance towards me, desperate for approval. Whatever I say indeed. I had seen his gaze on me before, with all the adoration of a young soldier towards his commander, and perhaps a little more. If I had not the joy of Lena's company, then the attention of such a pretty lad would not be unwelcomed. But this was not the time for such thoughts. This would be the day of the Spellblaze, and the boy had every right to be nervous. It was a few hours after midnight, and already our scouts would be engaged alongside the other races, drawing out the orcs from their hiding places. We marched through our main offensive lines, where we could hem them in before a great conflagration. All around were arrayed spears and swords and mail, glistening in the starlight. Troops upon troops of battle maces and purple robes held aloft glowing staves. It was a sight to behold. Yet we knew also the risk of engaging on open ground with the orcs in their full numbers. If the Spellblaze failed, then we would suffer greatly. I set up camp upon a low hill overlooking the field, and then left my entourage to seek the Cockerel army to the north. As I rode my stallion towards their station, I could see smoke rising in the east. 4 thick grey plumes stood out against the pre-dawn light. They would be villages looted and burned by the orcs as they rampaged against our feigned assaults. The townsteads would be empty, but after this battle there would be nothing left for the residents to return to, a small sacrifice in the game of war that spanned the continent. A fifth column of smoke began to rise, and in the greenish haze of early morn, those pillars of smoke suddenly seemed to look like a demonic hand stretching over the world, ready to dig its claws into the earth and rip out the flesh beneath. This, I knew, was the threat the orcs faced to us all, a menace to all civilization. Whatever price we paid to stop them would be a small one, so I fought, so we all fought. When I reached the Carcroll camp, Lynelli came out to meet me. Her smile was warm at the sight of me, but I could tell from her eyes that she was more excited for the events of the day. Just a few more hours, she whispered like an impatient child. This will be fascinating. As I came to the Carcroll pavilion, I saw Nera inside, and some of her senior mages and delegates from the Arhuman kingdoms. I knew Turfel would not be with them, as he stayed in his northern city with his people. It was not cowardice nor age that held back from the front lines. Indeed, it was said that ever since his wife was killed by the orcs, he had restrained himself from battle, lest his anger overcome him and he destroy friend and foe alike in his rage. Yet it was known that sometimes he would venture through the lands alone, and he would bring with him a deafening storm of wrath, and the orcs would cower at the rumor of the approach of Turfel, Tempest of the North. Nera and Lynelli commanded the Carcroll forces, and from their firm set look on their archmages' faces, it was clear that they were ready for whatever the day would bring. Yet Nera looked troubled, doubt evident in her eyes. "What irks your sister?" I whispered to Lynelli. "Some dumb dream," she responded callously. Nera's eyes shot up. "It were not a dream," she barked. "An omen it were, I tell ye." She turned to me with pleading eyes. "Ye must believe me, Aranin. Something must go terribly wrong today. I saw last night a terrible sight in my dreams, as if it were a memory of long ago. There were a burning city, made of glass and silver and marble, and as it burned I did hear the cries of thousands, tens of thousands, young and old, all dying. And then the city fell, for it had been held in the sky, and it crashed down to the earth with shattered torment that spilled across the lands. And the other cities there were, the pillars of violet light struck up from them, and they did dance around, filling the air with a scent of ozone and searing flesh. Death was everywhere, death like none we'd ever seen. It were no mere dream, I tell ye. It be a message, a warning, some forgotten tale of the dangers we play of. We must stop this thing." Lynelli was tapping her foot impatiently as her sister raved, but I could see some of the other leaders looking worried. I knew I had to quiet Nera down, so I drew myself near and put my hands on her shoulder, looking her calmly in the eye and bringing my face close. "It may well be that this is no dream, for this is no normal day, and even in all the legends of ages past this will stand out as a day of reckoning. Our civilization is under peril, our way of life threatened by the Orcus scourge. We rest upon a knife's edge, the world balancing on a pivot, and the wrong sway could tip us into darkness and despair forever. Our actions today will decide this, so yes, you have had the warning, you have had a message, that message is to be strong, but today we all hold the reins of fate in our palms, and only the steady hand can guide us past the threat of doom that is to come. Nera, can you be that steady hand?" She looked at me with open and hopeful gaze. Her fingers clenched around my wrist as she sought to draw strength from me. She nodded slowly then. "I'm sorry, Aaron. I'll be strong." I turned to the others, who all seemed rapt by my words. It was clear that leaving them to their own thoughts could only bring trouble. I had to pull them into action straight away. "It begins now," I shouted. "Gather your troops and prepare for the march. Slow would say we shall advance, carefully shall we hold the battle, and beyond the fire and fury we shall emerge free and victorious. This day shall stand in history forever. This day shall mark a new era for all races. The day of the Spellblaze is here." They all cheered and rushed to order their troops, taking courage from the duties of the command. Nera went to her own mages, and I left the pavilion alone. But outside I was ambushed by Lynelli, who pulled me into an empty tent with a playful laugh. "Ye said ye were no leader," she exclaimed with a grin. "That were a leader's speech if I ever heard one." I shrugged and smiled modestly. I said what I had to. She drew close, then. I saw a flush of worry in her face. It were just a dream, right? I could see them then beneath all the bravado and humor she was mortally scared, her fingers trembling as she gazed into my eyes, yearning for reassurance. "It was just a dream," I lied, "and it's a lie I have paid for with all my heart and soul. Everything will be all right." I pulled her close and wrapped my arms around her slender frame. She held tight to me, still trembling slightly. Thank you, Ariane," she whispered. Turning up her face, she kissed me, and it was the softest, most delicate kiss she'd ever gave me. It would also be the last. We parted then, and I began the lonely ride back to my own troops. My heart was now pounding like a deafening war drum. Whilst the words of Nera still echoed around my head, they stirred up the memory in me of a dream I myself had this morning, but that had laid dormant in my mind till then. I was lying in my bed, and floating above me was a shape of light and air, like a figure of a creature I had never seen before. It had long tentacles for arms, and billowing robes flaring about it slowly. Where it should have had a head, there was only a small bump, but I could tell it was focused on me. It stretched out a long tentacle toward me, as if it were warding against a dark and dangerous threat. A feeling came over my terrible foreboding, the looming portent of a doom like no other world had ever seen. At the tip of the tentacle near my brow, everything went black. Was it a dream, some strange foretelling, or could have been a true apparition, something trying to give me a direct warning? But I had no time for such thoughts. The time of Spellblaze was nearly upon us, and there could be no room for doubt. I spurred my horse on to my fate. Alright, well, that's 4 chapters of the Spellblaze Chronicles. I'll read the next 4 in the next episode. That'll be enough reading for now. And I really hope you enjoyed it. So, this is the lore of Maj'Eyal in its full glory, so to speak.